use them in teaching, how to use them in our own growth. Bless Lord Stephane and all of his ministry that he does across the world. But thank you for bringing him home to St. Mark's. Amen.
Lord, we put these prayers before you, the prayers of our hearts, our minds, and our tongues, asking for the intercession of St. Mary, St. Mark, your psalmist and King David, all your angels and saints and martyrs. Hear us, Lord, when we pray thankfully together. Our Father, who art in heaven.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Okay, take a seat. So, we are really blessed to have with us Stephane tonight. And for those of you who do not know who Stephane Rene is, he's one of a kind. There's only one Stephane. His writings of the icons are second to none. I'll just say something that I have experienced personally with Stephane when the church in Hounslow of St. Mary and Pope Kyrillos was being prepared. Stephane was writing the icons there. And one of the masterpieces is the Pantocrator. And it was such a challenge because the sanctuary inside for St. Mary Pope Kyrillos is quite tight, narrow. They had already put in the altar, and it was a curved Pantocrator and quite tall. And I used to go, Stephane maybe never realized because I was not a priest at that time, so I used to go watch him while he was writing. But I realized that while he was doing that, he was most of the times saying something. And I think most of it, I'm sure he will tell you more, but I think you were all the time you were praying, you were reciting certain prayers and psalms. Maybe in my mind, but I can tell you, I saw something was being said, but it was beautiful. We're very fortunate to have Stephane with us today. I did try to tease him and tell him everybody's coming with their canvases and boards and brushes and everything, but hopefully as time passes we might reach to that level. So over to you, Stephane. May the Lord speak through you as he always does. Thank you.
I got two. Hope you don't mind if I sit down. Where do I start? I'm totally unprepared as usual, but I think I'll start at the very beginning because in fact St. Mark's Church is my home church. And it's the first time I ever saw the icons of Isaac Fanous. The first time I came to St. Mark, probably between Easter and Ascension. Between Easter and Ascension, 82, May 82, I think. And when I saw them, I remembered, oh, these. And I thought, are they new or are they old, right? They really struck me as very, very special and interesting. And I thought then, well, if I ever go to Egypt, I'd love to meet this person. And lo and behold, 2 months later, my wife and I were in Cairo, and after the yes, what? After our stay, about 4 or 5 weeks, we realized that in fact we were living we were staying at Abuna Antonio Sfarad's house. I don't know if any of you remember Abuna Antonio Sfarad, I'm sure you do. And we were staying at his flat in Shara Ramses. And Stephanus lived 3 doors away from him. And so we went to meet him at his studio at Abbassia. Yeah. All this technology is taking all our time. You know? Okay, I was like, ooh, that's too loud. Ooh. Scary. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, so arrived at his studio for the first time, and it was, you know, he was there to greet us. And he had a row of icons that he had just finished for a church. And wow, it was absolutely amazing. You know, warm glow, this light, and the expressions on the faces. I mean, it was just amazing. And anyway, we went to lunch, and then we became friends. The year after, so he invited me to study with him. But, you know, he wanted me to stay for a whole year. I said, well, you know, I can't stay for a whole year, but maybe we'll come, you know, we'll see. We can come, you know, once a year or something. And sure enough, the next year I was in Jerusalem for something, and I decided to take a coach from Tel Aviv to Cairo, which you could do at the time quite easily. And it took about 6 hours, but it was a great trip. And then Dr. Isaac didn't know I was coming, you know, because in those days we didn't have mobile phones and all that. So 9 o'clock, you know, knock, knock. So I spent a whole week with him, and that was really the beginning of my, you know, my study of iconography. And then it became, you know, quite serious. I mean, so we went every year for about 5 years, up to 6 months, and then I started a doctorate at the Royal College of Art in '87, I think. Finished in 1990. So this doctorate was on Coptic iconography, and well, not exhaustive study of Coptic iconography, but you know, with a special look at contemporary iconography. So from that time, you know, with a doctorate, you know, allows you to really go quite deep into whatever you're researching. So I did that, and for 3 years, mostly in Egypt, actually, but you know, sometimes, you know, obviously you have to be in a studio in London. But so the end of that, I began to form, you know, an idea. It takes quite a while because iconography is not just painting, right? In fact, painting is probably 30%, 40% of it. You know, the rest of it is what you don't see. You know, the theory of it and the canon, right? So now, what is a canon? You know, a canon is what makes the difference between this style and that style, between, for instance, the Greek style and the Russian style, or the Coptic style. You know, you work according to the canon. Okay, the canon is a set of rules, not rigid rules, but rules nevertheless. And you have to learn them, you have to be familiar with them. Part of the canon is, for instance, geometry. And so one has to be familiar with geometry, and not only just geometry, but symbolic geometry. So here's an icon of the divine architect. Now, I received an interesting message from a friend, a priest, a Coptic priest, in America today, and he sends me an image of my Instagram page of this icon, right? And the person asked him, because they knew that I had done their icons, and they asked him, is Dr. Stephane Rene a Mason? A Freemason? Which I thought was very amusing, right? Why is that? So okay, Freemasonry has an idea, has this thing called the divine architect. But that's, masonry, actually, it's really architecture. And here we are looking at something that is not Masonic at all, not at all. It is based really on the fact that everything in creation was made through geometry. And this is a fact that science is beginning to discover lately, which is very interesting. So if the creation was created with geometry, then obviously to represent the heavens, to represent the invisible world, right, we have to use also geometry. And so this is symbolic geometry. So I will come back to symbolic geometry a little later in the slides. I just wanted to introduce the idea with this particular icon here. This is a pantocrator that is part of the project that I've been working on in Cairo for the last 2-3 years. And it's quite large, and you see we are trying to incorporate this geometry, and this at the bottom of the pantocrator here is a series of figures which are inspired from a certain manuscript in the Louvre. Not in the Louvre, in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. And with amazing geometrical designs in it, and all based on what is called the flower of life pattern, which is also the primordial pattern. I will explain a little bit about this primordial pattern a bit later on, which is you find in Coptic art from way back. This is another niche which is right next to this altar. Has 3 niches, and so the central one is the pantocrator that you've seen. Then on the left, from the point of view of the onlooker, obviously you have the anastasis. The anastasis is based on a Byzantine design. So in the Coptic, in the Coptic Church, the image of the resurrection has been for quite a while based on the garden scene, okay, which is with the cave and the gates rolled and all of that and so on. But the Byzantine design is quite different, and it happens in no time. Basically, all icons happen in a timeless reality, right? So we have to understand that too. But this is special because Christ is now, or Jesus is dead in the tomb, right, for 3 days, and during that time, this happens, okay. In the invisible realms. You see, and he's standing on the gates, and the gates of hell, and he's lifting Adam and Eve and sundry saints, Old Testament saints, from the grave. So that's the anastasis in the Greek, right? And here is the transfiguration. That's the other niche on the ladies' side of the altar. And again, you can see that these patterns have been repeated. So it was very interesting because I work with 2 assistants, English assistants, nothing to do with Egypt. They are very good, actually. They are really good. And one of them is a specialist in geometry, and he sort of retro-engineered all these amazing patterns from 15th century, 16th century Coptic art, right? So it's quite a unique thing. Very complicated. Remember, we asked the priest to find us young people who were interested in painting to help us, color the all the very small patterns. And yeah, they came for 2-3 days, and they were very excited about it. No, wrong one. Other side. I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Yeah, right. That's the painting of the Pantocrator, or the central one that you've just seen. I put that in there just for the technical side. The technique of icon painting is from dark to light. Okay, there's a symbolic meaning to that, which is that Christ came to take us from darkness into light. So the process of painting an icon with ectempera, especially, is that you cover it with what is called the proplasmos at first, which is the dark color, right? It's the dark color. Then you can see the dark color a little bit now, but then you draw the features, and then you start to light. So that is the first light. And the first light is basically what you're going to use as a base to build the light. So then you would add a little white in your mix each light, because it goes on very, very thinly. It's a transparent layer of light, basically. We call it light. So that's for that. Oh, I'm back again. And next, right, this is me in the dome. We made a dome. Actually, they didn't know what to put in the dome. They had 3 domes, and they didn't know what to put in the dome. So I suggested the middle dome, which is the largest dome, should be the Virgin of the Sign. Yeah. What is the Virgin of the Sign? It's the Virgin. She is in orant position, and her hands like this, and she has the child inside her womb. And this is called the sign, because it's the sign that Isaiah gave, that a virgin shall conceive and shall bear a son, and his name shall be Emmanuel. So that's the actual finished piece. It's about 3 or 4 meters wide, that diameter. And you see, well, you can't see because it's very small, but his name is Emmanuel. Oh, why don't, right. This is another, if any, have any of you been to St. Paul's Monastery in the Red Sea? Yeah? Did you notice that when you enter it, there's a huge, well, it's quite a large dome with horsemen. I don't have a picture here, unfortunately. With horsemen, and then in the middle of it, where normally you would expect to see Jesus as a Pantocrator, you have this pattern. And I thought that was very, very interesting, because this pattern is a very special pattern called the primordial pattern. And we decided to use it in those 2 small domes. So there is one, and there is another. And so here, do you see the cube in this one? Can you see the cube? Yes? Okay. So this cube is formed by, it's in fact an hexagon, right? And if you put your eye at the center of it, you will see the cube formed. It's a 3D cube, actually. So the other one is a little different. This is a different. It's the same pattern but done differently, and the other one is doubled, okay, or tripled, actually. So we actually went to the bishop, to Amba, what's his name now? Sorry, I'm very, very bad with names. Amba Rufail, right? To sort of, present the idea to him, because the church is part of his parish, so we can't just, we couldn't just go ahead and do something like that without checking. Not that he knew, but anyway, it's part of protocol, I suppose. And so he accepted the idea. So we're actually delighted to be able to do that at this church. So, right, this is the descent of the Holy Spirit, right? So here we go back again to discuss geometry. See, because every icon is based on geometry. And so if you are an iconographer, or as many people call themselves iconographers today, especially in the Coptic Church, and have absolutely no idea of the canon, they have no idea of symbolic geometry, or even just symbolism. Symbolism is really the language of icons. So if we use it wrongly, then we are diffusing, a wrong message, basically. We are not accurate. So here you can see the triangle, yes? Can you see the triangle? Right, and then the triangle emanates from a circle, which is in fact the halo of the dove. Okay. Well, this is the diagram for the descent of the Holy Spirit, which is when when the Spirit descends to earth, right? And then here we go, right? So again, it's very small, so you can't read. But you have those are very, very simple diagrams, very simple geometrical figures, which are actually full of meaning and symbolism. So the square is a symbol of earth, right? It represents the physical realm, and it is masculine. So we have to also get acquainted with this idea of assigning, the gender, basically, feminine or masculine. And so certain shapes will be masculine and certain shapes will be feminine. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You can still hear when I speak, yes? And so the triangle is a symbol of fire, right? Example, pyramid. Pyros is the Greek word, hence pyramid, or spiritual energy. And then the circle represents heaven and eternity, and it is feminine. So a triangle is masculine also, because fire is masculine. So then, we go back to the down, go down a little, now up, right, that's it. And then, so this is what I was talking about, the descent of the Holy Spirit here. The circle and the equilateral triangle emanating from it. The symbol represents the union of opposite elements. So fire and water, right? Water is a circle, feminine, which can obviously be translated into masculine, fire, and feminine, water. It is the basis for the icons of the Transfiguration and the Pentecost. Could we go up? Yes. So, right. So now we come back to this symbol, which has been hijacked by Israel, I suppose, which is not a Jewish symbol at all, right? By the way. It's quite a universal symbol. You find it in Hinduism, you find it in ancient China, and so on and so forth. But it has certain meanings. So the six-pointed star of David, right? It's also called the hexagram, right? From the six is created by overlaying two triangles that form an hexagon as they meet. So the hexagon represents fusion or union of heaven and earth. So you could say that God meets man and man meets God in that hexagon there in a symbolic way, which is you have one triangle going up, right? One triangle coming down, and so they meet in the middle in the hexagon, which is, there's also a numerical value to these triangles. And one is 1080 and one is 666. So the masculine one is 666. The feminine one is 1080. They meet in the middle in 1746, right? So I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it's very interesting because so the hexagon, when you join all the corners of this hexagon, you get the cube. Can you see the cube? Right in the middle of the star. That's the cube, okay? So the next figure is, for instance, the squared circle is also symbolic of the union of heaven and earth and is the basis for the floor plan of a church, as well as the icon of Christ in glory. That's a very interesting point that I actually discovered in my research, is that the plan of a church, right, is based on this, on the circle and the square. Okay, the circle, so the dome, right? The dome is a symbol of heaven, and the square or the cube in a 3D. So you just have to translate from 2D to 3D. Okay, and so the square, which is the cube, is a symbol of earth. So the church itself is the symbol of, well, it's the union of the two. So you bring heaven on earth when you build a church. I mean, that was the original idea, right? But then, so I don't have this. This is part of stuff I've been writing, but I don't have other stuff where I could show you the plan of a church and then overlay this idea. For instance, the symborium. Do you know what a symborium is? Sometimes when you go to large cathedrals, over the altar, there's a dome and 4 pillars. There you go, the dome and the cube. Okay. Then you have the. So let's go a bit up. No, other way, the bottom. Yeah, here. So we have. So the vesica Pisces, which is the overlaying of 2 circles. Okay. It's obtained by overlapping 2 circles, creating a 3rd figure, right, in the middle. At the symbolic core of the vesica is the idea of creation by cell division. Cell division, okay, which goes back to the flower of life of the primordial pattern that I was showing you in the dome. So yeah, somewhere, no, yeah, up. Yeah, that one, yeah. Or the next one, yeah. So this one, and then it's divided. So this one is divided in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or I don't know. Anyway, but the next one is divided much more. See, and the idea with this primordial pattern is that it can extend infinitely. Infinitely. It's and that is in a way a symbol of creation itself. Okay. Next. So going back now, right? Next one. So when we apply sacred geometry or symbolic geometry to icons, this is what happens. Nothing is actually designed ad hoc. It's not like, it's not according to what you feel, It's not art in the same way that you conceive art, say, at art college, okay, for those that study art. And you see, the ancient Egyptians were very much aware of that because we have found wall paintings that actually still bear the mark of the grid. So they used the grid. Yeah? The grid was made with a string that was dipped in probably burnt sienna, some type of earth, red earth, and then, was extended and then flicked on the wall, so it would make a line, a straight line. And this was done at regular intervals, so it would create a grid. And within that grid, they knew their canon, i.e. they knew that the body, the length of the body was so many squares, and so on and so forth, which is more or less the same idea as using this grid on the icons. You see that from the navel of Christ, which is at the very center, extends the equilateral triangle, which is going to be where you find the three apostles below him. Can we go up? Yes. So you see they are contained within this triangle, which is a triangle of fire, which is, what is called the divine light, or the taboric light, in the case of this particular icon. So you see, and this, can we go back to the page before? Yes, this one. You see this sign here. This symbol has the same symbolic value as the hexagram and is highly prominent in the icon of the Transfiguration of Jesus on Mount Tabor. So if you go back to the image, here you see this sign here. You see this. Some people joke about it and say it looks like Jesus is going up as a rocket because it has these three things under there. But if you look even at very a Byzantine master, what's his name? The one who was Andrei Rublev's master, Theophanes the Greek. If you look at some of the transfigurations by Theophanes the Greek, you will find this sign there. And even more, you will find all of it, because here we only have half of it. We only have the three prongs at the bottom. Okay? But there are three prongs at the top also. So, but he shows the ones at the bottom and the ones at the top, and Christ is in front of it. So it's very interesting. Next. Oh, no. So who's changing it? Thank you, because yeah. So very bright colors. My gosh, it's not as bright in real life. And this is an iPhone job. But so this is a triptych. This is a giant triptych. It's about 6 meters by 5 meters. 5 meters, yeah, sorry. 6 meters by 5 meters. And the middle of it is concave. Yeah? It's an apse. So the priest wanted to have Christ by himself with the 4 creatures in the middle, and he said he wanted the 24 priests, 12 and 12. So yeah, I'd never done that. So it took a while, but we actually worked out. It took a couple of days of hard work, but we worked it out quite okay, I think. And so you see Christ in the middle with the 4 creatures. What are these creatures about? The what? No.
Gospel writers.
No. Those 4 creatures are very interesting, actually, because, okay, you have an exoteric explanation and you have an esoteric explanation. Esoteric just means that it's hidden. I mean, it's not secret. It's hidden. And so the exoteric explanation. Okay, you have the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? And they have reasons for that. For instance, John is the eagle because he starts his gospel, the highest. In the beginning was the Word. So, and then and then Matthew, the genealogy, of Christ, and so on. But really, you have another explanation to these four. And they are really the four elements: fire, air, water, and earth. And furthermore, there are many other things too, but I won't go into that now, because it's really too complicated. I have a whole chapter on this thing. So you see that, in fact, we have a zodiac here, but we have a kind of hidden zodiac, okay? And the zodiac is an interesting thing, and I know that it sounds a bit funny to speak of iconography and the zodiac. But the zodiac I'm talking about is not the one you find in the Daily Mail, or, the zodiac I'm talking about is in fact a cycle of 25,950 years. So it's basically 26,000 years long. And it's to do with one of the longest movements of the Earth. Okay, so it's called the Platonic year, the Great Year, or it's called the precession of the equinoxes. You can research that, you can have a look at it. I'm not inventing it. Anyway, so the thing, it seems that because this particular subject has been developed and has developed over many centuries. I mean, we have examples of that. The earliest I can think of is 430 AD in Rome, okay? And it's not quite in that form yet, but you see the four creatures around Christ, the four separate creatures, because these creatures are mentioned also in Isaiah and in Ezekiel also. But they appear to be one being with four different faces, okay? But then in Revelation, all of a sudden, it's not one being, it's four. Okay, so it's called the Tetramorph, which is four being or four forms. So then they are. So what was I going to say? Well, it's a bit complicated, all that, and maybe I shouldn't even have started. But now that I've started, I have to finish it quickly. Sorry. So from the 5th century, 6th century, so we have Bawit, for instance. Everybody's heard of Bawit in Egypt. 5th century to 8th century is the zenith of Coptic art. If you go to the Coptic Museum, you'll see some lovely niches from Bawit. Anyway, from Bawit onwards, and in Europe even, in Germany, in France, in Spain, right, you had what is called Romanesque art. And Romanesque art was still using the old canon. Okay, so the old canon included the Christ Pantocrator with the four bodiless creatures, and this Christ Pantocrator was either in a Vesica Pisces, as I've shown you, or in the ellipse. Okay. What's the difference? The Vesica basically is a female, is a feminine symbol, okay, and the ellipse is a cosmic symbol. So that is really the main difference. That the ellipse, like here, Christ has his feet rests on the earth. So the earth is his footstool, as the Psalms. Right. The earth is his footstool. And then what happens? Well, the earth goes around the sun in an ellipse, in an elliptic shape. Right, there's the ellipse. So the ellipse is made up of, it has two centers. It has one on top and one, but they're really in the middle, because you see, it's like two circles, but it's not. It's a squashed circle. Okay. There's a special way of doing that, but I won't go into that now. Can we go to the next slide? Right, this one. So here, right, just so you can have an idea of the size of the piece, and the next, go up, yeah. This is my friend Amina from the Royal College. she was in the same year, and she lives in New York. So when I was doing this in New Jersey, she used to come and help us every day. We were about five on this for about 6 weeks. This is Callum, who is working on the biomorphics. This is the geometrical wizard that I was telling you about. That sort of worked out this very intricate Coptic geometry. And here we are. So if you stop here, you see, now, these sort of things, biomorphics, geometry, is part of iconography. And it's very important to actually study these forms. Islam has really developed a very strong tradition of biomorphics and in decorative motifs. And so we decided to, use these. They're very ancient, actually. These are acanthus leaves. And acanthus leaves have been used in sacred art for 2,000 years at least, or more, actually. The Romans used them, the Greeks, and obviously the Copts. If you go to the Coptic Museum, you'll find some very early stonework of very intricate biomorphics mixed with cruciform geometry. Next. Right, we have here some cherub, fiery cherub, that we decided to have two of those, one on each corner, and then next to it you see how we use the point technique to actually make interlacing, all this sort of weaving patterns. It's very interesting, very ancient technique, which is called the point technique. So you actually measure, and then you put the points at the right places, and then you join them up, and you get stuff like that, which is very nice. Next. Right. Or this is actually quite difficult to design, and this is the conch shell. Which is a very ancient symbol connected with the Virgin Mary, because she's the shell that gave the pure pearl, the true pearl. Okay, so I actually used the same pattern in the thrones of the Christ and Saint Mary on the iconostasis. So they have the shell also. Next. This is a very interesting. This has been 2 years in. It was part of the iconographic cycle of Saint Mary's in Cairo, and I was in two minds about it, because these 21 martyrs of Libya, they're very new saints, and they're very, very contemporary, and I had explained to them that they should not expect from me any sort of realistic portraits of each one of these 21 saints. I'm not a portrait painter. I mean, I'll have a go at Pope Kyrillos, and but that's about it. And so then they accepted that, and but then I didn't know what how am I going to show those? And then I wanted to get away from the usual thing that they show them in the orange suits, and then they show the executioner with it, and so on. I wanted to get away from that sort of thing. And so I came up with that, and I thought that I would represent them as like every young man in the street in Cairo, how they would look really at maybe 30, 33, which is really what the Fayum portraits were about. Do you know about the Fayum portraits? Anyone? Yeah. Well, the Fayum portraits were painted when when the deceased were at the zenith of their life, you know, around 30, 33. And the style of the faces here is not my usual style. You know, I sort of, you know, I looked at, a lot of early Coptic paintings, and there's a certain canon that they followed then in Bawit. You know? There's a certain way of showing the hairline and the ears and so on. So I used that, and I thought, let's have them all standing there. And at the bottom, can we see the bottom a little bit of the piece? Yeah, right. You can see, well, you can't really see much, but so the sea, you know, the sea with the blood in it and so on. And, you know, the icons are totally symbolic. Okay, so any icons where you see, or supposed icons, where you see actually things looking like real life, they're not icons, right? Because the saints are glorified. That means they are beings of light. You know, they are glorified. Next. Right. So here, this is the last one. This is Pope Kyrillos and Habib Girgis. So I was very lucky with Habib Girgis because Ambassador was kind enough to send me a picture because he wrote a book on him, and he had some good pictures. So I chose to have Habib Girgis. But actually, he's holding the Shoria, which is not in the original picture, right? And he's wearing the Badrashil of Saint Mary's Church. You know, all the deacons wear the same. So they asked me to. And Pope Kyrillos is carrying an icon of Saint Nina because, he was associated with Saint Nina quite strongly. So, and some say, oh, he doesn't look like Pope Kyrillos, or some say, oh, he looks like Pope Kyrillos. Personally, I don't. I did my best. You know, as I say, I'm not a portrait painter, so that's it, really. So I'll stop here because it's getting late, I think. No? And then, no, 1 hour. If you have any questions, I'll maybe 5-10 minutes of questions.
Stephane,
yes.
Isaac's writings behind you. Could you point out some of the symbolism, for example, the fish in the baptism picture, some other symbolism, the two doves underneath the Virgins of Mary and their feet, things like that that are used by Isaac?
Yeah, I mean, those are very straightforward symbolism. I mean, there's a fish here because if we go into that, we're going to stay the whole night. But I mentioned to you the precession of the equinoxes, you know, all of that whole precession thing, right? It's divided, 26,000 years divided in 12. So you have more or less 2,000 years each age, each aeon, okay? So Christ came to usher in the age of Pisces, okay? So hence you have 28 mentions of Pisces in the New Testament, right? I shall make you fishers of men, loads of them, right? It's in Piscean symbolism. You have both Piscean and Aryan symbolism. Aries the ram, right? So 2000 BC or so, the age of the ram came. So in Egypt, what did we worship in Egypt? Ammon, right? And what was Ammon? Ammon was the ram. So, and then the ram became a lamb, okay? So Christ, we associate two kinds of symbolism with him. The Aryan symbolism of the lamb, right? And then the Piscean, which is the fisher of man, or Ichthos, actually. It comes from Ichthos in Greek, which means fish, but it's Jesus Christos, Ios Theos Sotir, Ichthos. So that's where it comes from. or that's how it has been sort of formulated. But the fish, it's to do definitely with, if you go to the catacombs of, I can't remember her name now, in Rome anyway, and you will find some of the earliest Christian art, and in the agape meal, what they call the agape meal, which eventually became the Last Supper, right? In the agape meal, what is in the plate? 2 fishes, one going through and one going that way, right? Which is a sign of Pisces. And they were absolutely aware of the zodiac in those days. I mean, from at least at 200 BC, for instance, there's the Hellenic Jews, right, had zodiacs in their synagogues on the floor. And so it's not something that, just appeared. It's very, and the Egyptians, I don't know, there's the very well-known zodiac of Dendera, found in the Temple of Dendera in Egypt. And this goes back, this particular zodiac only goes back to, say, 58 BC or something like that. But the knowledge of these cycles predates that by a long, long way. So the Egyptians knew all about the precession and based their whole religion on it. So if you don't understand the precession, you cannot understand Egyptian religion, basically. So, and Christianity to some extent, because a lot is left in, a lot of classical wisdom, you could call it, is left in Christianity. Was left in Christianity at the beginning, for sure. Then slowly, it was sort of, it sort of disappeared. But there are traces there, for sure. Any other question? Yes?
When was the tradition of writing and venerating icons date back to? And in those early days, did icons look like that? Or did it develop over time to take the form of
Yeah, you have about 3 questions in there. But, I mean, the veneration of icons started quite early. Basically, the concept of the icon is based really on the incarnation, right? And he became flesh. So therefore, we can represent God as a man. Right, that's really the basis for the icon. And so, yes, very, very quickly, it became, if you think of the Fayum portraits, the Fayum portraits were, we could say, the prototype of the icons, because they represented people that had passed on, right? So they were not glorified. They were just deceased and waiting for resurrection according to the Egyptian rites, okay? So that their ba and their ka could find their bodies again, sort of thing. But with the icon, it's very, very different. The whole concept has changed from a deceased person to one that is glorified and alive forever, basically, alive in Christ, basically. So that's really the idea. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and when they started venerating?
Well, venerating, yeah, long time ago. I mean, long time ago,
When they started, did they look like that?
No, of course they didn't look like that. No. This is called contemporary iconography, meaning that it's something that was created, that was really, it's the revival of iconography. That's what this is, okay? Because it had died in Egypt. Nobody knew how to make it, nobody knew how or knew what or how or why. And so it died. And it basically, it wasn't really very much alive, I mean, before, right? And since probably the 12th century or 13th century, say, the renovation of St. Anthony's Monastery, say, not the current, I mean, the recent renovation, but when they actually painted the icons, when this iconographer called Theodore went there and painted the church. We can trace a style, a continuous style, more or less, from the 6th century up to the 12th, 13th century. And then it begins to go a bit funny. And then by the 18th century, you have the Western, you know, the Catholics and the Protestants arrive in Egypt and start to convert the Copts to their ideas and so on. So then, you know, it's completely lost. Say 1800, it's lost, okay? So for 150 years, there was nothing in Egypt in terms of iconography, okay? And then Isaac Fanous came along in 1963 or so. He went to Paris to study at the Louvre, not to study iconography, but to study restoration. But while he was at the Louvre, he discovered this well-known Russian iconographer, Leonid Ouspensky, and so he went to study with Ouspensky. And that's how he retrieved the symbolism, you know, the theory of iconography, the whole idea of canon. What is a canon? And what's it, you know, what do you use it for, right? And so that's how he could go back to Egypt and revive the tradition of icon painting. So for 50 years, exactly, for 50 years he worked, and he did this work here, which is seminal, really, in mid-70s. And then it just went on from glory to glory, you know, until 2007. So, yeah, there's a big problem in the Coptic Church with iconography, and you know, it's even worse than when Isaac Fanous started. Now, than it was then, because now we have something called social media, and and on Facebook or Instagram, anybody can become an iconographer overnight, and yeah, it's a big problem. It's a big problem because these people don't study. They haven't studied. There is nowhere to study in the first place. So we can't blame them, you know, for sort of going it alone and doing whatever goes through their heads, what they call, you know, icons. But it's very pernicious because it's actually destroying what Fanous built over 50 years. They're destroying it now, as we speak. And nothing will be left very soon. So yeah, we have to think of some kind of way of passing on the flame. You know, when I was in Egypt, for some years I've been working with the Prince of Wales Institute of well, at first Institute of Architecture, then it became the School of Traditional Art, and so on and so forth. And they have outposts. There's one in Egypt. There's one in Doha, I think. There's one somewhere else, I can't remember. And they teach, they're wonderful, really. They teach the proper way. In fact, it's the same system as the one I went through at the Royal College, right? So that's just moved to Egypt. The teachers come and go, London, Egypt. And when I visited there, I met one Coptic